Okay, while you're getting situated, my name is Sen Gupta. I'm an analyst at ARC, and I have taken up interest in the challenges we have as an industry in dealing with process control and the staffing of it. How do we staff to get these jobs done? Okay, so a little bit of history. We'll go through a little bit of stuff. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I think what I really want to focus on here is your experiences, what you've taken away from some of the challenges you've got, what you've done to address them, what's worked, what's not worked, and just have an active discussion between people who actually have the problem. Does that sound good? Yeah, a little participation. Okay. Okay, this is actually Peter's slide, but I like it a lot. And it shows kind of the evolution from a digital standpoint of the skill sets and how they've been added to over time, right? You know, when I got hired back in the 80s, it was like, and I'm not going to tell you what part of the 80s. When I got hired back then, you know, I got hired because I was a double E, and I understood wiring, and I could program, right? And that's really what I needed to know as a process control guy. They showed me an orifice plate. I'm like, is this an Aggie ping pong paddle or what? I didn't know what the orifice plate was. So there was a whole bunch of mechanical stuff I had to learn. But I was working right next to a guy who only had a high school education. But he was able to do the work. He was my mentor. He did it better than I did, right? So, you know, you start fast forwarding as time goes on. We've opened up the systems. We've got a bunch of IT technologies that we have to deal with. The transmitters are smart now. You got the DCS is smart. You got smart routers. You got firewalls. You got cybersecurity to deal with. And you know, IT people aren't cybersecurity people. That's a difference. And so now the technology has made it easier, right? Isn't that awesome? Okay, but you've still got these skill sets you've got to deal with. Okay, if you kind of take a look at what process control is responsible for, you'll see you've got IT skills that they have to maintain. You've got OT skills, right? And it's not like it's getting easier, right? The first DCSs didn't have operating systems that changed every 3 months and had patches and all that other garbage you had to maintain. You just loaded the one I used had a Bernoulli disk. You know, it's like 20 megabytes or whatever. You could back up the entire system. The ones before that backed up on a cassette tape, right? You just stick the cassette tape in and hit play, and it'd be great. Now you've got patches, and you've got to maintain the patches on that, patches from the manufacturer and from the OS vendor. You still need to understand instrumentation. But you've also got the other things that are operational, like HAZOPs and drawing updates and instrument indexes and all that, project responsibilities, et cetera. And then we've got this personnel problem, right? 10,000 people a day in the US are retiring. That's expertise leaving. When we had the discussion yesterday, one of the speakers said, good old Bob, right? Good old Bob, you can rely on good old Bob. He knows what's going on. You just call Bob and he'll get it fixed. Bob's retired. Bob hadn't got a replacement. And the guy I'm trying to replace loves mobile phones and whatnot, and he doesn't want to go working overnight. He doesn't want to be called out in the middle of the night to do something. He wants to sit on, maybe call in from the house and fix it from there or whatever. So we've got a demographic shift. How do you capture that expertise? Do you capture that expertise? Hopefully the answer is yes, but how do you do that, right? I thought this was interesting. 66% of the millennials think their boss is technologically challenged. I mean, think of that. You've lost credibility in the eye of your employee when they hire on. They have a different set of skills they rely on that which is why it's hard for the older generations to figure out why they're thinking that way, because they think about the problem different, which is not necessarily a bad idea, right? Different worldview, different life goals. That's this life goal thing. It's really not that different when you get into it. The more you read about millennials, the more confused it gets, because millennials are, you read one, they're lazy and they don't want to do anything. You read another one, it says, no, it's not really that bad. They just have a different thought process on getting work done. So one of the things I'm hoping to talk about is how you're addressing that, because everybody has to address it, right? Okay, technologies. There are a bunch of new technologies coming out. We talked about this shift in technologies that we have, and that's complicated our lives and complicated the skill sets we need, but we've also got technologies coming to help address the problems we have with expertise leaving, but also helping automate some of the more mundane or routine tasks. We also have, the analytics has done a lot in this area to help address things that are mundane or speed up, like diagnostics that we may need. Okay, so I've got several listed here. Several resources. Today we're going to be talking to two resources. You got us, ARC, and also your peers, which is why I wanted to have this roundtable discussion. It looks like we're going to have to go to multiple tables, which is awesome. I'm glad you're here. But there's also, in case you weren't at my last session, there's the Automation Federation and ISA have a skills matrix that they've been putting into place and working on. Your suppliers will have tools and ideas, but there's also outsourcing solutions that your suppliers might be part of that solution for that. Working with local colleges, and if you've got a good HR department, they can actually help you. I know it seems counterproductive to get HR involved, and in some cases it is, but they have tools, they have some knowledge that can help you address some of your personnel problems. So this is what I wanted to discuss, have you guys discuss amongst yourselves to get some discussion going, get some ideas flowing. And so why don't we group up into tables. You don't really need an ARC person at each one, but I do need somebody to write down some of your answers. Does that make sense? I'm getting a lot of blank stares. All right, so let's pick three tables. We've got two here that we kind of put together. We'll take the third table where Paul Steinitz is, and the guy with the black baseball cap who wanted to heckle me. All right. Great.
Hello. Yeah, I'm Doug. I'm represent table 1. And
table 1. All right.
We will go with summary, question number 1 and question number 4. So question number 1 states that what are the challenges that your organization currently face with regard to process control? What do we say? Staffing. We cannot get an engineer to go from chemical engineer to process control. I think another point that we want to make is that the way that institutionalized training that need to improve with emphasis in process control, and the method need to be more effective to get the student more involved and more interest in process control. And then the other related issue was the current process control staff is overtasked with requirement and too much responsibility to maintain the hardware that they have right now. And then number 4 is how have you engaged with HR to address the problem? Yes, we have engaged. We have 2 sets of On this table, we work for government, so we have limited resource. Right now, we're on hire freeze, and then we have merging and acquisition. We also have hire freeze. So, having hire freeze, we cannot get new resource to come in. And I think that's what success and experience that we have is basically because of that we have had success getting staff augmentation instead of the direct hire to substitute for that problem. What problem do we have? There's no long range for retaining of process control engineer. And the new hire are looking to work at places like Amazon, Google, Uber, and other places where they have more inclined to software and stuff like that. That's it for table one. Are there anything that I missed? Good. All right.
Wow, that was great. So in the first question, we were looking at a bunch of different stuff, and there's the standard one, which we all feel it's hard to find people. It's flat hard to find people. The other one that I thought was, other comment that I thought was really strong here was the lack of recognition from management of how to handle or how to deal or the importance of dealing with this problem, right? We know it's a problem. Our management isn't really in touch with that, right? So there's a lot of effort that we need to do to make sure that these folks understand the importance of having the right staff to deal with our process control, right? Because process control is the brain and the nervous system. It don't work, we don't make money, right? Okay, so we talked about, we did HR2. I thought the thing that was really interesting when we had our comments together was we talked about them not understanding us. They don't understand process control, but that's really on us, right? That's on us. They have a skill set of how to hire. They don't have a skill set of how to hire an engineer, right? So we as a process control team need to make sure that we work with HR to be proactive in helping us with these issues. So that's the two main things I thought was interesting. I'm going to add another one because I'm allowed to. And number 5, when it came out to system integration or using a supplier, the biggest use case was patching and system management. That's not something that requires an engineer per se, and it's really great leverage of somebody who actually understands the system and is trained very well on the system as an expert. And in smaller facilities, that's a big deal because you can't have good staff, dedicated to system management and still operate or optimize your processes, right? Which is what the process control engineer is supposed to do. So, table number 3.
Well, we had a pretty wide diversity of topics that we covered. Probably the biggest one was staffing. How do we deal with staffing moving forward? I mean, several times it came up that basically we're planning for new hires for maximum of 5 to 7 years. We're not planning to keep them around for 20. I mean, it's just not realistic in this day and age. How do you improve retention? I mean, we had somebody was commenting on getting out to the high schools, identifying the high potential candidates, and having discussions about what their career should look like or what their options might be that they haven't considered. The thought was if you can keep them local, going to a technical school rather than a 4-year school, you might keep them local to your community as well. It was felt that if somebody went away to school, that they were mobile and they weren't afraid of moving in sometime in the future. I guess the other, I'm trying to read through my notes here, and I got terrible handwriting, so I can barely read my writing. You know, we talked a little bit about hiring experienced hires and you know, wondered whether there was a culture issue, bringing an experienced hire into a new organization. I guess I just did that with Georgia Pacific. I don't think it's going to be an issue, but you never know. One of the companies here for engineers going out to a site, I mean, it was typically a minimum 18-month rotation. So it wasn't seen as, okay, I'm going to go to some remote site and end up stuck there. At the end of the 18 months, they were allowed to ask for a relocation. So I think that's a great idea. On the analytics side and advanced control side, I think there it's a matter of coming up with standards. I mean, we can't afford to be different at every site. So if we can use the process automation on the equipment, data analytics to determine where, you know, what is standard operating conditions, that's going to help us moving forward. Even to the point of, you know, specifying the equipment to be standard, rather than being at the mercy of the individual site making an engineering choice with the vendor that they're most comfortable with. So that was, in broad brush, some of the topics that we talked about.
Who are you asking? Well, yeah, you didn't get my approval.
Let's look at notice. When are we going to write up the notes in written paper? And if so, should we catch everybody's name and email address and send them a copy of the report?
Yeah, we should, and yes, I will. So.
Volunteer.
Yeah, I like volunteers. So if you're, I tell you what, it's probably easier for you to just send me an email with your contact information. My email is on our website, arcweb.com. You just go under analysts and you say, I want that ugly guy with the beard. Because I have a goatee in the picture they have on the website. But if not, write this down. It's Sen Gupta, so MSENGUPTA at arcweb, ARCWEB.com.
Again, slower.
Huh?
Again, slower.
We have a sign that should everybody sign.
We could do that, but I'm afraid I'm losing it. Okay, so it's basically my first initial and last name with no spaces. Yep. First initial, last name. ARC Web.
I have your email.
Yeah, you do. Darn.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, thank you, guys. Ah, okay. Yeah, I can't get the after look on my phone, so I didn't want to leave it to somebody else.